Hello and welcome to Movies, Films, and Flicks. I am Mark Hoffmeyer, and joining me is a man who was among millions to buy throwing knives in 1995. It's Adam Hodgins.
I don't regret a thing, Mark. I don't regret a thing.
We've shared the throwing knife story on every single episode we've recorded since 2017, 2018.
It's been a constant throwback, right?
You know when you get to a podcast and there's a 30-second ad and people just hit 30-second fast forward? I wonder if people do that with us when we tell the same stories about how you were in Canada and I was in Florida. We both went to local flea markets. We threw throwing knives into a wall. I almost got I was barefoot in the grass throwing knife at a palm tree. And it bounced off the palm tree and landed right between my toes. My big toe and my, I don't know, whatever toe that is, pointer, I don't know, next to big toe. Right in between there. I mean, it could have gotten ugly. So that was
Mark,
my throwing knife experience.
You and I dovetail into our throwing knife stories the way other podcasts dovetail into a Casper mattress ad. I think we need to find a throwing knife company that will support this.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Don't let our childhood be yours. Go to Razor's Edge Throwing Knives, razorsedge.com. They have the top quality in throwing knife and throwing knife apparel for all your throwing knife needs. No more bent tips, no more bruised toes, just seamless throwing knife effort every time. Razor's Edge Throwing Knives, razorsedge.com. Like, we could do that, right?
Oh yeah, let's do it. Let's just make it up. Let's just do fake ads for every show.
We start our own company.
We become millionaires and just retire. We get on I was gonna say Fish Tank. We get on Shark Tank.
Fish Tank. Fish Tank is for ideas that are like $5,000 or under. If it's not a Shark Tank, it's just a fish tank.
I called a Celestial the other day during Chronicles of Riddick episode. I called her Sea World. I don't know where that came from. I just called it that. But hey, since we do our conventions, Adam, we can add a 1995 action movie section. And in these sections, we have a bungee jump like on Goldeneye. We have, let's see, Waterworld, you can drink your own pee. It's safe. Desperado, it's safe. Throwing knives.
But you know what else you could do with Desperado? You know how on like Survivor, they're like a challenge, you got to climb a rope, go into the sand, and then put a puzzle together?
Yeah.
We'll have you got to run across, grab a guitar case, go to a table of guns, and see who can get the most guns in their guitar case in a minute.
Oh my gosh. And it's got to throw it the farthest.
It's got to close at the end. It can't not close.
Oh my gosh. That'd be amazing. Just weapons everywhere.
Yeah.
And we need a Judge Dredd one where you wear a helmet and you get put on trial. It's really boring, but it throws everyone off.
The Judge Dredd one is with the helmet is more like an endurance thing where you walk in, you get the helmet on, and the last person to take it off.
Oh my gosh. And how about this? Sudden death, you get a kitchen fight with a mascot of the Adam and Mark Con, the MFF Con mascot, and you have to fight him in the kitchen.
Do you think we could find a Samwise Gamgee lookalike?
Yeah, easy.
So he comes and you fight him in the kitchen.
If y'all haven't watched Icebreaker, go watch it, because that kitchen, I've never seen an actor more scared in my life than in that. But, I was looking at, we've talked about this probably again, but I gotta tell you, after listening to the commentary and just revisiting Desperado, and I want you to share your story and I'll share my story, but I think 1995 for me was the ultimate year for me as far as movies go, because I remember going to Waterworld by myself and watching it. I remember going to the theater and seeing Mortal Kombat playing and going, this is the greatest thing that's ever happened to me. I saw Congo at a new theater that opened up in Newport Richie. Before we just had those little theaters, but this was the first amazing one. I think it looked like maybe like an Egyptian temple, I don't know, but it was one of those big theaters. But I also remember sneaking into the theaters because I was 13 then. I snuck into theaters, watched Species. I watched Batman Forever. I saw Goldeneye, blew my mind. I watched Heat, Judge Dredd. I mean, I spent so much time, like Hackers, dude. That VHS of Hackers. I bought Crimson Tide from Columbia House. Jackie Chan was introduced to me in 95. This was just a year for me that, like, Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, I was like, oh my gosh, Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, it's going to be cool, it's going to be this. But all these action movies, and I'm just talking about the action movies that came out at this time.
I definitely remember 94, 95, that spread being the beginning of, like you just said, you nailed it in the head, of the era of going to the theater yourself.
Mm-hmm. Because you hit
right?
13.
So, like, you hit 13. So I think the first movie I saw in the theater, like without my parents, was Stargate.
Oh my gosh.
Right?
Yep.
Like, so in 94, there was Stargate, there was like The Shadow, there was The Mask. I think there was like a
Oh,
Leprechaun,
you know,
a Leprechaun movie.
you're right, because 94 I went to the Mask with two buddies and I laughed so hard people shushed me. But I was laughing. I
Yeah.
wasn't being loud. I was just loving the movie. And I also snuck into The Crow in 94 and my mom took me to see Pulp
Yep.
Fiction, which is
Yeah.
bonkers.
But again, like The Crow, Judge Dredd was 95, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I remember after Speed came out in 94, going to see Johnny Mnemonic in 95 and being like, well, that was a movie.
Oh, Demon Knight came out in 95, man. Like, that's just what
Yeah.
a stacked year, dude.
And
Major Pain, that was on constant rotation. I know I'm just not naming. I went and saw 9 Months 3 times. So I really do. I think 95 is my year. I think just.
so I I remember seeing Congo, Cutthroat Island.
Oh man, that's
Like these were just movies that you didn't look at them through the lens of like, is this good or bad? It was just a movie. Like, yes, I went and just saw it. It was good. It was good based on the fact it was a movie, right?
Yeah, that's a great point. I don't think I analyzed any of them, but you know what's funny about me? I remember in Mighty Morphin Power Rangers they had the toys. I'm like, I'm gonna go get those. When they had the Casper toys at Pizza Hut, I'm like, I'm gonna go get those. But then I also watched Demon Knight, and I was like, oh my gosh, like Showgirls came out. I was like, whoa. So it was a weird in between year for me where I go to watch Indian in the Cupboard, but then Jumanji was 95 too. So I go to watch those, but then here I am watching Leprechaun 3, and I'm like, hey, Jade and To Die For, I can watch these. So it was just the craziest time. I was a child, Adam, but I had my hands on infinite movies. I could rent whatever I wanted. And so you're an adolescent, but you're watching gnarly stuff.
My son is the same age now that I would have been in 94.
Oh wow.
And I'm like, I don't know. Like, I don't know. But I will say this, Mark, as it was in 95, there was a science teacher. You know how like in high school, the tech teachers all watch The Net, and the business teachers all watch The Paper Chase, and the biology teachers all watch Jurassic Park, right? That's the rundown.
Yeah, and history teachers show Schindler's List, but you got to sign a document saying you can watch it.
Right, exactly. So in my high school, when I was in grade 9, one of the science teachers showed, instead of showing Jurassic Park because of the DNA, they showed Species.
No.
Like he showed it in class?
No. He got fired.
100%. That was the last thing he did at the school. He
wanted to get fired.
I think that was his swan song. He's like, guess what I'm going to do to go out.
He imploded. That's, man. What was the reaction of this 9th grade class?
So I wasn't in the class. I had heard like stories of it, but it was definitely like what happened was he showed them, and you can't fit a whole movie into a class. So you do it's a 2-day thing. So he showed them day 1, and then the school was abuzz about like, he showed them the naked, alien sex movie that happened. And then word got to the principal, and then the next day the principal went to the class, and there it was, the second part.
Wow. Yep, that teacher wanted to be gone. He got. You do that on purpose.
Yeah, 100%.
That's amazing. Oh my gosh. Do you want to hear my first memories of Desperado?
I do, more than anything.
I went, I saw my dad every other weekend, so I was with him every other weekend, and so I was there to see him one weekend. That's my 3rd weekend and a 4th weekend in a row. But we went to go see a movie. I think it was like Apollo 13 or Babe or one of those films. But one of our family friends, Alfonso, went with us, but he went to Desperado. And so we watched the movie, and I came out. I was pretty jazzed about what I had just watched, and he came out of Desperado, and he had this like glazed look in his eyes, and he just looked at me and he goes, "Mark, what a movie." And then he's like, you probably can't watch it, but oh man, he was kind of in a stunned. He was just really impressed with this movie. Like Alfonso loved Desperado, so the next weekend I just went and watched it. But I just remember his look. He was like, "Oh my gosh, that was incredible." But I'll never forget that look. What was your experience with Desperado?
So my first experience was my mom and dad went to go see it, and before I went. And again, this was a time where like some movies had trailers, but not all of them. Like, and they didn't all get TV spots. So I remember being aware Desperado was coming out, seeing the poster where he had his forehead against the shotgun.
Oh, what a
Right?
poster. Yeah.
What a poster. So seeing that and just like the word Desperado, and like, again, maybe a couple 30-second TV spots, but not, there wasn't this hype like world we live in now where there's like spoiler alerts and like the trailers give away. Like it was a different time where you'd go to a movie and still be surprised what was happening in the movie. And my dad is a huge Western fan, and I think he thought he was going to see like a Clint Eastwood cowboy movie. Is what I think he was walking into.
Silverado, Desperado, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, something
Rio Bravo.
like that.
Rio Dorado.
all those autos.
Hugo. Wait. No.
And so he took my mom to go see it, and he came home, and I was like, "How was the movie, Dad?" And he was like, "It was awful, son. It was just," he hated it because it's definitely not a spaghetti western, right? Like that's not what it is. But it's ironically like Rodriguez's Fistful of Dollars. Like he was really trying to make an homage to the man with no name.
It's a western.
It's but not on the surface. And so my dad, it just wasn't what he was expecting. And he's like, I remember him being so upset with it. And he went on a Wednesday because Wednesday was like the night he took my mom to go see it. But I was going with my friends to the movies on Friday, and we hadn't decided what we were going to go see yet. And so they're like, "What are we going to go see?" I'm like, "Well, my dad said Desperado wasn't great, but our theater only had 2 screens, so it was either Desperado, or it was only actually 1 screen, but it was an early show and a late show. So it was either Desperado or I think it was maybe his first night or something else." And they were like, "Oh, we all agree, let's go see Desperado." And for a guy who bought his first guitar 6 months prior, that movie was the perfect movie for me at that point in time. Like it's just this nonstop action. And I had no idea about El Mariachi, like that wasn't until years later when you're like, wait, this is a sequel to something. And so one of my favorite things, and I think that's why I love movies like Waterworld, movies like Mad Max, is when there's just this assumed history that nobody explains to you. And so there's this mysterious history behind the events of Desperado. Like Desperado is a reaction to a story we never saw. And so I loved that. And so I just came out of it just being this like tour de force of like, it was just, he was shooting everything. And there was such great character moments and like good characterizations from actors in that movie that you get lost in the world of Desperado.
And I hadn't watched Hard Boiled yet. So I wasn't familiar with that kind of gunplay coming out of Hong Kong at the time.
Right.
So, in the commentary, I love every Rodriguez commentary is absolutely beautiful. I just love listening to him talk. He made this movie for $7 million. He could have had more. He's like, I don't want it. So he just goes down, shoots in Mexico. He said on the commentary, he goes, if you were on my crew and you only did one job, you were dead weight and you were gone. So he only had 2 real stunt people on this movie. He only had, the guy who gets shot when he's with Quentin Tarantino, he's 5 different guys getting shot in this movie. So he just reused sets and he shot it on a budget. He shot tons of footage. And so watching this movie, not only did it take me to like a different place, but it was kind of interesting. I'm like, there's Tarantino. I'm like, there's Steve Buscemi.
Yeah.
And I knew about Banderas. I knew about him vaguely. And so I'm watching this movie and his flicking of the guns, when he flicks the gun behind his back, the opening stylistic sequence, which is hilarious. He was the tallest Mexican I've ever seen, and he's just blowing people away. And just the way that he, Robert Rodriguez did that on purpose because El Mariachi is a comedy of, there's a lot of funny moments, but people didn't get it. So in this one, he let people know this movie is going to be wild. And so me in 95, because if you think about the action films, Heat and that kind of like Die Hard with a Vengeance, Bad Boys even, there wasn't the gun flicking. There wasn't, I hadn't seen Hard Boiled, so I knew nothing about balletic gun motions. So watching Antonio Banderas just like strut